Hello crafters, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsSaysStamp.com. Welcome back for another Yippee for Yana episode. In this video, I'm sharing my secret for creating abstract painted-like backgrounds using nothing more but ink pads. All supplies I'm using for this project are listed and linked in the video description below for your convenience. My trick to creating these painted-like abstract backgrounds is using the right type of paper. I have found that glossy, synthetic papers work best for this technique as they don't absorb the ink as fast as the regular papers do, giving you lighter color and allowing you time to manipulate the ink on the surface of the paper. This is Spellbinders' specialty Glimmer paper. It is designed for hot foil stamping, but I've found it works amazingly well for this technique. Here's one of the backgrounds I've done. It looks very abstract and not like something you'd be able to create using just your ink pads, but you can. I prefer to use Simons Pawsitively saturated inks for this technique. I find this type of ink and this type of ink pad foam to work much better for this technique. And all I do is direct to paper. I apply the ink onto the paper, and next, if I need to, I use my finger and I blend it out. I found that the drier the ink pad, the less the ink there is in the ink pad, the better the result I get, as I don't transfer as much ink onto the paper and I don't have to blend it as much. My light pink ink pad is pretty dry and that one gives me the best results. So basically you just press the ink pad into the paper and use the ink pad to create those abstract waves or edges. Here are my top tips for building these backgrounds. Number 1, apply ink from the edges in. I don't add ink in the center of the paper, I just add it to the sides of the paper. I can add ink onto all 4 sides or just to some sections, but never to the center of the panel. Number 2, leave a little bit of the panel free from ink, keep it white. You want some of that white to show, although you can create a completely colored background using this technique if you want. I wanted mine to have a little bit of white. Number 3, start with the lightest color and layer the darker colors as you build your background. I do prefer to use lighter colors and I stay away from the darker colors as I feel these backgrounds look so much better and so much nicer when lighter colors are used. And number 4, my rule for adding color is to add 90% of the lighter color, 60% of the medium color, and no more than 30% of the darkest color. This will give you a beautiful layered background. It's okay to mess your background up. You can wipe the ink away using a cloth if you don't like the result. You can use a baby wipe to get a lot of the ink off of the background. And that's what is great about using the synthetic paper and this type of ink. The synthetic paper doesn't allow the ink to go inside the paper, the ink sits on top of it, and because the formula of the ink is different, if needed, the ink can be wiped off. You can, of course, try this with other types of ink that you have in your stash. I have tried it with dye ink, the Simons Says Stamp dye ink, and it works, but I still prefer the softness of these positively saturated inks. Now, this is one of those backgrounds that did not turn out how I wanted it. The colors I used here were too dark, but I still wanted to include it in my video to show you the process and show you that not every background is going to be the way you want it. Now, these backgrounds create beautiful backgrounds for cards, obviously, but you can also use them to die cut something, perhaps a large focal element for your project. I used mine to create clean and simple cards, and all I did was I added a simple sentiment on top. Keep watching if you'd like to see how I created the cards using these backgrounds. I have 2 ideas, a simple and a stepped up one. First, I use the Simons Says Stamp Matte Gold Mirror Cardstock. It is a very beautiful paper, it is single-sided, and it has a very pretty subtle shine to it. I used one of my banner dies and I die cut a bunch of small banners using my die cutting machine. Now, if you don't have a banner die in your stash, you can cut banners like this using a paper trimmer and scissors. Simply trim a 1/4-inch strip. Next, using your scissors, make a small cut in the center of the strip, like so, and then cut from the corners into the center. This will give you a pretty even V shape and to your banner. And then do the same on the other side and you're done. Very easy. Now, if you do have a die cut a bunch of these banners. I like to pre-cut tons of them so that I have them ready on hand. Now, one tip I have for you when working with this mirror paper, you have to be careful as even the newest cutting plates will leave marks and indentations on this paper when you run it through your die cutting machine. I was using nearly brand new plates. I literally just opened them on that day, and I still had little marks on the paper. So this is the pristine piece of paper, the one that hasn't been sent through my die cutting machine. And this is the piece that went through the die cutting machine just once after I've cut one banner. And you can see the indentations the cutting plates left on the paper. Now you can prevent this from happening by either cutting your mirror paper to size first, so that you're not sending the entire panel through your machine when you need to cut just a small banner, or you can place a sheet of printer paper onto the mirror paper before placing the cutting plate on top, and that will protect your mirror paper from any cut marks that your top cutting plate might leave behind. Next, for these sentiments themselves, I used Simon's pre-printed sentiment strips. I love using them for my cards. You get so many different, similar themed sentiments in one pack. It is insane. All you need to do is cut them apart, and you can do that either using scissors, a paper trimmer, or again, a banner die if you have one. I used several dies from my stash, and I quickly cut as many banners as I needed. Now, I don't have the dies in the same size as the sentiments, as in the same length. The dies are longer, but this allows me to cut any length banner I need. I just flip the paper to the other side, I realign it with the edge of the die, I make sure to tape everything in place, this way nothing will move, and I make the last cut to finish my sentiment. And it looks absolutely perfect. Now, these sentiments come in white. They are printed in black on white paper. You also have the option to get them in reverse, white on black. I am using black on white, and I love to add color to these so that they aren't blank white. Now, I usually do that with my Copic markers, but for these cards, I use the same colors of ink that I use for the backgrounds, and I simply lightly blended the ink onto my die-cut sentiment strips. This way, my sentiment strips match my backgrounds. Next, I added my gold V-shape banners behind the sentiments, just for something a little extra. Now, these banners are much larger than my sentiment strips, but I didn't bother trying to do the partial die cutting to fix the length of the banner to the length of my sentiments. Instead, I just cut small portions of the gold banners, just the V-shape ends, and I adhered them from the back, faking a full banner. It was so easy to do. Next, I added a strip of fun foam from the back to be able to add dimension, and I adhered my sentiments onto the background using glue. I didn't bother centering them and adhering them straight. I'm very much into the wonky placement lately, and I love the way it turned out. I trimmed this background to 5 1/4 inches tall, and I foam mounted it onto an A2 card base so that I have a little bit of the white card base show at the bottom. Very simple, yet very effective design. Now, if you want to step this design up a bit, you can add foiling on top of it. I didn't want to include foiling in this video as I was trying to make this more of a beginner project and tutorial, but I couldn't resist showing you what you can do with just a touch of hot foiling on your card. Here, I used my FOLIAGE Glimmer hot foil plate and matte gold foil and foiled 2 tier plates in the corners of the panel. I followed the Glimmer hot foil machine instructions. I'm not going to show you the entire process. There are lots of other videos online that you can watch if you're new to hot foiling. And look at this beauty. Fantastic results, especially on top of the abstract ink blended background. I hope you'll give this idea a try. If you make a card inspired by this video, we'd love it if you shared the project online and tagged us on social media. We always enjoy seeing what you make. Thanks so much for joining me today. Love you guys, and I'll see you next time.